So the problem we will be discussing today is a group of roommates who live together and share a chore chart, but one of the roommates has stopped doing their chores. And we will be discussing how to resolve it using the 5 methods found in the Harvard article. The 5 strategies for conflict resolution are avoiding, which is usually what most people do, competing, accommodating, compromising, and collaborating. And we will go through each of these 5 to show how different solutions to conflict resolution can result in different responses.
For avoiding, usually this is just like not doing anything and just hoping the problem will pass by or blow over. Like in our example, say one of your roommates, like Shamus for example, is not taking out the trash or doing the dishes. Instead of having a conversation, you would kind of avoid the topic and maybe do the dishes for him or not say anything, and that would just result in animosity between roommates and no problem being solved.
So when the strategy of avoiding is used, the person that's responsible for the mess in this case, myself, say Jessica never told me about this before, I would have no idea, and then it would just continue piling up, and then there would be no conflict resolution, more animosity from Jessica towards me, and on my side everything just feels the same because there was no actual communication between each other. So avoiding doesn't really ever solve the problem. It just kind of prolongs it and then adds more fuel to the fire until Jessica would reach her boiling point and then probably explode onto me.
Yeah, probably.
Definitely. Alright, so competing is a power-oriented mode in which you use whatever power seems appropriate in the situation. So it means standing up for your rights, defending your position, what you believe is correct to simply win. And an example of this is
so for example, when you're living with a bunch of roommates, a way that you could compete for conflict resolution would be to get stickers or stars put on the chart to show that you're doing you're excelling at what your responsibilities are as part of the household. And that can be really helpful just as fun motivation for everybody involved. And another example is
Yeah, we were kind of saying that a good example would be either whoever does the recycling gets to take the money from the recycling, the bottles, or whoever contributes the most throughout a certain week with the chores then gets lesser role the next week. So it kind of just makes an actual fun motivation into doing your chores rather than just fighting with your roommates to do them. And yeah.
The next 3 strategies, which are accommodating, compromising, and collaborating, kind of go together, but we'll dissect them a bit one by one before talking about how they work together. So first is accommodating, which would be kind of helping on or maybe taking on a task, doing the garbage one day yourself, even though it's supposed to be Shamus one day. And then
accommodating too would be if I know Jessica has a busy schedule, I could just help her that week, do the chores for her, because I understand what's going on in her thing, which is easier than avoiding and stuff, because there's actually collaboration between the two of us, so it's kind of all the strategies coming together. So yeah, accommodating I guess would just be I'll pick you up today, then you'll help me tomorrow type of thing.
And that kind of goes along with the next one, which is compromising, which is maybe 1 week if I have a lighter schedule and you have 3 midterms, maybe we compromise and say, okay, I'll do the garbage this week and maybe next week you can do the garbage.
Compromising too, we could set specific goals each week of Ashley will do the garbage, Jessica will do the recycling, I'll do the dishes, she'll mop the floors, and then we could just rotate through it. Or if say Ashley doesn't like the smell of garbage or it's hard for her to take the garbage out, then we would compromise with her and say, okay, then that can be Jessica's job because Jessica finds it super easy, and then Ashley can do the dishes and so forth.
And really that whole process is like collaborating, I guess, which is the fifth strategy. So coming together to work out a schedule is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Overall, we're just trying to find any resolution because it's better than just letting it get to such a point where like relationships can't be repaired or salvaged. And overall, like working together is kind of mandatory in a household where you live with other people. So
Yeah, you're always gonna run into arguments and
Like,
situations where you're gonna have to compromise.
The number one goal of conflict resolution, I'd say, would be to both resolve the conflict but also maintain the relationship. So using these last three strategies like all together and like constantly talking and like letting each other know what's going on and what's easier, what's harder, what works, what doesn't, is just gonna help maintain the roommates' relationships with each other, the more like overall morale in the house, and also work towards like positively resolving the conflicts too.
Yeah, I think communication is really key, and I think the hardest one would be like avoiding. I don't think that would really help with the conflict. But like knowing who you're talking to and kind of knowing what's going on in their life and talking to them about it, I think will really help with the situation and help to like, you know, do it in a non-violent way, and you know, you don't need to yell or get angry, like you can work it out so it doesn't get to that point, and you can still like keep your good relationship with that person.
Yeah, and having that open communication within your roommates creates trust within you guys. So say if there is a week where I have a bunch of midterms, I can trust that I can ask Jessica to do a task, and I trust that she won't get mad at me.
And it also goes back to what we talked about in class with mindful communication too, because when you're avoiding, it's easier because you're avoiding maybe a tough conversation. If I feel like Jessica's like constantly slacking on something and I just kind of keep ragging on her and then I decide, okay, I'm just gonna avoid it, then it kind of avoids like ever resolving it. So you actually have to have like overall communication, no matter if it's a hard subject to talk about or it might be a bit awkward because it's within two roommates, but it's still well within your rights as a roommate.
Yeah, like when you're roommates, you're constantly around the person and having to like trust them to do certain tasks. So if you're just avoiding, it's gonna, you know, catch up to you quick, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when it's something like doing chores, you're gonna see if
Yeah.
there's dust on the ground.
Yeah, or dishes
Yeah.
in the sink.
Exactly.
Yeah, overall, I think it's just important to like be able to communicate and like ask for help, especially when like weekends or like weekdays get very busy and sometimes super stressful. And like it can be hard to remember like all of your responsibilities if you're consumed by one thing like school. So being able to like communicate and ask for help with your roommates is vital to maintaining that sort of like cohabitation relationship.
Yeah.
And being able to set aside time to meet with your roommates. Say like each week you have 30 minutes for meeting with them or something.
Yeah. And I think that also kind of adds what you were saying, like to compromising too, like maybe like understanding like, you know, 1 week's really busy, like maybe I'll just do the tasks. So, you know, maybe next week when I'm really busy, I'll know that my roommate would be willing to compromise and do more tasks.
Exactly.
You know?
And the way you talk to is important too, because rather than me like getting on my roommate to do the tasks, it's more like me offering like either like, hey, like I noticed you haven't been doing the dishes, like if this week is harder, I can accommodate and help you this week. And then just so you know, like next week I have a couple midterms coming up, so like it would be better for me if I could help you this week, get you out of a tough situation, and then you can pay it forward for me later on.
Especially if that's like a one-off thing.
Yeah, like, you know, people are gonna forget or are gonna make mistakes, and you know, you kind of have to give people a little bit of grace sometimes. Like, it doesn't always have to like fester into this big problem and resentment, I think.
And like everyone's going to like falter at some point, and like it's just human to forget and make mistakes. So it's important to know that like your roommates are also people, and they're willing to talk to you about your like issues, hopefully. So
I think like probably overall, based on this discussion, the strategy that we would say to avoid is avoiding.
Avoid.
Because there's no communication, no problems are ever getting resolved. You're just building animosity and kind of like a subtle hatred towards your roommates. Whereas the last three and kind of competing too all involve all the roommates working together to find a way that's best for everyone, which is, in my opinion, the best resolution.
Yeah, and something that interlinks all, like the last four, is just open communication. I think we all agree on that.
Definitely. I think this also connects to like experiences that are, you know, when you're older in the workplace too, like not just with roommates and when you're younger and living alone for the first time. I think, you know, you can use these strategies to help with, you know, conflicts with school or with work or even in sports or.
Yeah, definitely, like throughout the workplace and in sports, and just kind of like these strategies that you can build now as like a young 20-year-old are going to carry you over your entire life. Just especially with like communication and talking to people, like that's a huge skill that people don't have, and a lot of people just rely on like avoiding and hoping things get swept under, whereas like you need to communicate in order to actually like highlight what's wrong, highlight how you're going to fix it, and then what's going to happen, especially once you get in a work setting and say your boss is or a coworker is just like repetitively doing the same thing that like irritates you, and if you just continuously like allow it to happen, then you're just going to continue to find yourself more miserable and miserable at work, whereas like a simple conversation could have resolved it all right away, and then you would have found like a more positive and healthy atmosphere. It's like the same thing in sports, like with teammates, like you have to hold people accountable and stuff, and sometimes those are like hard conversations to have because they're people you see every day, but it's still like the most important conversations that like actually allow you to grow as people.
Yeah, and I find like oftentimes people aren't trying to be like difficult or like, you know, go against what is supposed to be done or whatever. Like I think like a lot of times people just don't know that they're maybe like agitating you or doing something that's not right, or you know, like, and I think having a conversation will help everyone because it helps like the environment you're in and working in, and it also helps maybe like better like the person or yourself even like in certain situations. So like I think it's like a win-win situation to really like, you know, compromise and to have discussions and to collaborate with people that you're around.
Because if you don't have the conversation, then you're kind of just interpreting what the other person's motivations or like what their actions are entailing, and you don't actually like know. Like I could just be assuming just because doing this to irritate me and upset me, but really she could just be oblivious to the fact that she's doing something like that, and then a simple conversation would make her realize like, oh, I actually do this. I could see how from his point of view this was like something that was like negative or something like that, and now we can work together to fixing it. So.
Yeah. And also, it kind of goes into what like Gene Sharp did with his 198 methods of nonviolent action. Like, people have always been trying to find like the easiest, I guess, least argumentative and conflict-oriented paths to resolution, and like just being able to talk and like have specific ways to approach things in different situations, be it like roommates or with sports or in the workplace. Like, you're going to have to approach these things differently, but it's important to know how to do it, or at least how to start the conversation with the person that you might have a conflict with.
Yeah. And I think we all can agree we don't really want to have these uncomfortable conversations with people.
Yeah.
But it's much better to go living your life with talking to someone for 5 minutes rather than spending your workplace being uncomfortable the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of strategies, like what you said, like even more than we discussed. Like maybe there is a situation where you really are disagreeing and it becomes like keeps building even though you've had conversations. Like maybe then you like bring in a mediator or someone who's neutral, and to try to see both perspectives, because I like sometimes when you're really into an argument, I know it's hard to see like other people's perspectives sometimes, and you're just so hyper focused and tunnel visioned into it. Like maybe having, you know, a neutral party could help, like, you know, and we see that often in the workplace too, or even in like sports or
even like on the political stages and stuff too. Like everyone brings their own ideas together, and then people moderate, and then they decide what they like, take the best ideas out of those discussions, and then like work on them from there.
In summary, we went through the 5 different steps for conflict resolution in the Harvard website, and we found that avoiding is what people often go to, but it doesn't really help with solving conflicts. And really what does help with solving conflicts is open communication and collaborating with others.
Yeah, So in my opinion, what we talked about today pretty much comes down to avoiding might be the easiest strategy, but it's the one that results in the least amount of resolution, and pretty much communication is the most important piece in conflict resolution.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway was also open communication. Even if it makes you uncomfortable, it's important.
Yeah, like it's important to acknowledge that like everyone has rough times.
Yeah.
And so I think just being able to sit down and communicate when you're having these issues is really important.
Yeah, because in the end, everyone's human and everyone has their own things going on, their own experiences. So at the end of the day, just putting yourself in someone else's shoes and trying to work together is definitely the best strategy.
Yeah.